Hey, what's up everyone? I'm Aki Light, your pocket programming prof, and this is going to be our first look into using a game engine. And it's going to be a little bit of a jump, but that's okay. We're not going to do anything with the game engine yet. We're just doing some of the stuff that we already learned, some conditions and loops and arrays within a game engine. So if you haven't seen those lessons yet, check out the Akilite Programming Program playlist. The link's down in the description below. And for those of you new here, this is our first recorded lesson. Hello. The previous ones were live, so if you need any help or have any questions, come drop by our Discord. Link is also down there in the description below. And let's just get started. So I know diving into a game engine sounds kind of really scary, but just think of the game engine as a toolbox that's there to help you with doing things that games normally need, like loading images or detecting when keys are pressed, or like when detecting when the mouse moves. It's really just there to make it so that you don't have to do everything from scratch, so you don't have to, every time you start a project, make your own hammer and make your own nail every time you want to like nail two pieces of board together, But today we're going to go over the foundation of where to start when looking at unfamiliar code that maybe someone else has written. Maybe they've written part of it, or like they already have something in place, which is a pretty common scenario if you're doing any sort of collaborative projects, or if you end up even pursuing a career in this. And it's actually exactly the situation you're going to be in today. So you're going to be working on code that I've started off for you to sort of build up the intuition for how to approach any code that is new to you. So as usual, link to the starter code is also down in the description below. I'm going to be saying that a lot today. We are going to be making a 2D level editor that we can use later to recreate Baba is Here. So if any of you have been here for all of our office hour streams, where we kind of do more of the fun things, we did play Baba is Here, which is kind of like a Sokoban based puzzle game, and it's actually a ton of fun. We're gonna actually make that because I think one of the best ways to learn how to do things is to recreate something that you've already seen before, and sort of find out what goes into those. So that's what we're going to be doing. This is the very first part of that. We're going to have multiple parts soon, but welcome. So this time we will be working in an IDE, which is an integrated development environment, for those acronym lovers out there. So it's going to require a bit more setup than before. And what it is essentially, it's just an upgraded text editor. You can think of it as like a more powerful version of what we were using before. It does some extra things for you, and it also yells at you if you try to do the wrong things, which is more helpful than you might realize right now. So the one that we're using today is called Visual Studio. And as you can guess, the link is down in the description below. You can download the community edition for free, and that's probably the one that we're going to put down there. It's like the same website, so it doesn't really matter. But the community edition, that's all you need. It doesn't really bar you from doing anything that you'll really need if you don't pay for it. So with that, I do have some starter code, as I said. You can download that from GitHub. I know that I haven't taught Git yet, or like source control as a lesson. That's going to be coming soon, and a lot of things are going to be sort of, you're going to encounter them here today, but as we go on throughout these lessons, you're going to learn more and more about them. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a hand wavy introduction to them and just tell you generally what they do. So if you are familiar with programming, just know that there are more things that go into that, and we're gonna be sort of fleshing it all out, and like do it bitwise, piece by piece, so that we can actually like fill out all our knowledge of what these things are. But today we're gonna start with something really simple. We're gonna be using all the knowledge that you know before. You don't need to know anything else, and we can just jump into it that way. The first thing that you want to do when you download the code is you can actually see that I named it Ak, which is like Baba, but with Aki. So that's just the thing. You're going to want to open up that folder, and then inside of it is something called akak.sln. That means solution, or that's what it stands for. So more acronyms for you. You can open that up. I'm pretty sure if you double click it, it'll just open it in the editor for you in Visual Studio. If not, what you can do is you can just file open and then project solution, and then select akak in wherever you saved it to. Once you do that, you'll actually see that at the side here you have something called the Solution Explorer, and you can just sort of open that up and see pretty much what you'll see if you open it up in like your regular file explorer. Like here are all of the folders inside, all the images that are loaded in, and basically what you want to go into is game1.cs, and this is the actual code of it. So if you run it now, before doing anything, like first thing is probably just to try it out, right? See what it actually does. And you can see that like if you move things around with like WASD, or you can use your arrow keys, that there's like this little, it's like a little me tile that pops up. Another thing that you can do is you can press the numbers 1 to 5 on your keyboard, and then it sort of cycles between the different tiles that you can actually place. And so like I can move things around, I can change whatever tile I'm placing. So that's just kind of how this works right now. You can press enter, and enter will place whatever tile is there onto the screen for you. And so yeah, you can experiment with this, just test out yourself what it does, because that'll help you sort of correlate that to what the code says, and also help you figure out what the code actually does. Now that we have that, we can actually start looking into the code. And I know that this maybe looks a little bit intimidating at first because, wow, it's so long and there are a lot of things that you probably haven't seen before. But try to forget about that, because all code is basically essentially the same. You just read it and find out what it does and see where else in the code it's referenced in. Like for example, if I'm looking at these, I would probably start with all these variables and take a look at the name of them first of all. For example, if we take a look at these, like you'll see this is something called texture 2D, and I'll tell you now because we haven't learned about objects yet. We did have a lesson on data types where you can have like ints, and you can have characters, you can have strings, you can have all sorts of different types of information that you're giving the computer and that the computer stores. And so an object is like a bigger version of that. So whereas like integers and like characters and strings are all sort of built into the language, objects are sort of like, objects are custom versions of that, where they're like a box that you can store a bunch of data into, and the box has like all these different sort of features that you can use it with. So that will come in a bit of a later lesson, but all you need to know for now is that objects are just a thing that the computer is storing in their memory, and it retains data about that thing. And that data usually is like, you will be the one that gives it the data, or the computer will generate the data, and it's like doing all these kind of things to it. But that's essentially an object. Wherever you could use all the data types that we had before, you'll sort of see a custom name for it instead. And that's, if you see that, that's an object. Private here is just telling you sort of the scope of what can access this. You can ignore all these for now. You'll see things like public and private, and there's also protected. I'll talk about those in a bit of a later lesson once we also learn objects, classes, and functions. So you don't have to really worry about that now. And this is actually really good practice because you're coming into this assuming that you sort of know nothing about this yet and very new to programming in general. Basically, how you want to approach this is you want to first of all take a look at the variable names, and that sort of gives you a clue.